whispers of deceit. The investigator's gaze bore into the hyena seated before him, a figure shrouded in darkness despite the harsh glare of the interrogation room lights. The small, confined space amplified every breath and every movement, turning the room into a tense battlefield where words and silence were the only weapons. The hyena's demeanor exuded an aura of menace. His cold, unyielding stare betrayed no hint of the turmoil within. The investigator knew this game well. He had played it many times before, but never with stakes so high. This was not just another criminal case, it was the key to unlocking the mystery behind the assassination of President Natsu, a tragedy that had shaken the very foundations of guerrillist. With a practiced air of professionalism, the investigator leaned forward, his expression a mask of determination as he prepared to pry the truth from the hyena's tight-lipped silence. He knew he was facing a formidable adversary, a trained assassin, honed in the art of secrecy and deception. The hyena before him was no common thug. He was a professional, someone who had been groomed for this life, someone who knew how to keep secrets buried deep within. The hours dragged on, the interrogation room echoing with the sound of probing questions and terse responses. The investigator employed a battery of techniques, shifting from subtle persuasion to relentless pressure, hoping to break through the hyena's defenses. Yet, despite his best efforts, the hyena remained steadfast, his resolve unshaken by the relentless onslaught of inquiries. The investigator's frustration mounted as he realized that the hyena was not just a participant in this game, he was a master of it. Just as the investigator began to feel the weight of frustration settling upon him, a glimmer of hope emerged, a flicker of uncertainty that danced across the hyena's stoic facade. It was a subtle shift, almost imperceptible, but the investigator's trained eyes caught it. Sensing a crack in the armor of his adversary, the investigator pressed forward, his questions growing more pointed, more insistent with each passing moment. He could feel the tension in the room thickening, the atmosphere charged with the potential for a breakthrough. And then, in a moment that sent shockwaves reverberating through the room, the hyena's resolve crumbled. His cold exterior faltered, and with a voice tinged with resignation, he confessed to his role in the sinister plot to assassinate President Natsu. But what followed was even more shocking, a revelation that threatened to upend everything the investigator thought he knew. The hyena implicated Kodo, President Natsu's own son, in the conspiracy. The investigator's mind reeled at the revelation, struggling to comprehend the magnitude of what he had just heard. Kodo, a man he had once regarded with respect and admiration, now stood accused of the most heinous of crimes, a betrayal that defied all logic and reason. How could the son of such a revered leader be involved in his father's assassination? The very notion seemed impossible, a twisted fantasy concocted by a desperate mind. Yet, the hyena's words had an air of finality that was difficult to dismiss. Despite the shocking nature of the revelation, the investigator refused to accept the hyena's words at face value. He knew that in the murky world of espionage and intrigue, nothing was ever as it seemed, and the truth often lay hidden beneath layers of deception and deceit. The hyena could be lying, or worse, he could be a pawn in a much larger game, an elaborate ruse designed to mislead the investigation and protect the real perpetrators. With steely resolve, the investigator confronted the hyena, his voice a sharp edge cutting through the tense silence of the room. He demanded answers, refusing to be swayed by the hyena's attempts to deflect or obfuscate the truth. The atmosphere grew even more charged, the air thick with the weight of the unspoken truths hanging between them. The hyena shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape. And then, just as the interrogation reached its crescendo, a sudden and unexpected turn of events plunged the room into chaos. The hyena's eyes widened in a flash of panic, his hand darting toward his mouth with lightning speed. The investigator reacted too slowly, unable to prevent what happened next. In an instant, the hyena collapsed onto the table, a pool of blood spreading beneath him as the life ebbed from his body. The investigator stared in stunned disbelief at the scene before him, his mind struggling to process the enormity of what had just transpired. The hyena had chosen death over divulging any further information, a final act of defiance that left the investigator grappling with a sense of profound loss and frustration. The key to unlocking the conspiracy had slipped through his fingers, leaving behind only more questions and a deepening sense of unease. The investigator knew that the road ahead would be fraught with obstacles and uncertainties. But he also knew that he would stop at nothing to uncover the truth behind President Natsu's assassination, no matter where it might lead or what secrets it might unearth. As he surveyed the now silent interrogation room, the investigator could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. The stakes were higher than ever, and the future of Guerrillist hung in the balance. In the shadowy world of espionage and intrigue, the quest for justice was a relentless pursuit, one that demanded unwavering determination, unyielding resolve, and a willingness to confront the darkest truths, no matter how painful they might be. The investigator steeled himself for the journey ahead, knowing that the path to justice would be long and perilous. The investigation into the assassination of President Natsu plunged deeper into the shadows as a startling revelation emerged, thrusting Kodo, the late president's son, into the heart of the conspiracy. The motive behind Kodo's involvement remained a baffling mystery, shrouded in layers of deceit and betrayal. How could a man who had always stood by his father's side, who had shared his vision for the nation, be implicated in such a heinous act? The very idea was almost too much to bear, yet the evidence was beginning to paint a troubling picture. Days of relentless probing led investigators to a pivotal discovery, a substantial money transfer from Kodo's personal account to Womu, a female hyena who had thus far managed to stay in the shadows. The transaction was suspicious from the outset, given the timing and the amount involved. Womu, known for her connections with the criminal underworld, had long been under surveillance, but this direct link to Kodo was unexpected and alarming. The revelation sent shockwaves through the investigative team, implicating Kodo as a key player in the clandestine operation that led to President Natsu's untimely demise. The investigators were stunned by the discovery, but they knew that this was only the beginning. There were still so many unanswered questions, so many pieces of the puzzle that needed to be put together. The convergence of the two police forces marked a significant milestone in the investigation. Guerrillist and Hyena had always been rivals, their relationship strained by years of political tension and distrust. Yet, in the face of such a grave crisis, they had come together, pooling their resources to unravel the intricate threads of the conspiracy. The collaboration was unprecedented, a testament to the seriousness of the situation. The investigators knew that they were dealing with something far bigger than they had initially realized, a conspiracy that reached deep into the heart of both nations. Womu, once apprehended, became the focus of intense scrutiny. Under the pressure of a relentless interrogation, she broke down and revealed that after receiving the funds from Kodo, she had transferred the money to another hyena named Booty, a junior associate of the notorious gang leader, Jess. This new connection added a dangerous layer to the investigation, linking Kodo directly to one of the most feared criminal organizations in the region. Booty, a key figure in Jess' operations, was known for his ruthlessness and his ability to stay one step ahead of the law. His involvement pointed to a much larger and more complex plot than anyone had anticipated. The revelation sent shockwaves through the investigative team. Kodo, the son of the slain president, was now implicated as a key player in the operation that led to his father's assassination. The evidence was damning, leaving little room for doubt about Kodo's involvement. Yet, amidst the mounting evidence, one critical question lingered unanswered: what drove Kodo, the son of the slain president, to conspire in his own father's assassination? Was it greed? Power? Revenge? The investigators were desperate to understand his motives, but Kodo remained an enigma, his true intentions shrouded in mystery. Financial footprint. As the investigation delved deeper into Kodo's motives, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, albeit slowly and with painstaking precision. The financial trail painted a picture of clandestine transactions and covert dealings, hinting at a motive buried beneath layers of deception and betrayal. But the more they uncovered, the more the investigators realized how complex the web of lies and deceit truly was. Every new piece of evidence raised more questions than it answered, and the investigators began to feel as if they were chasing shadows. With each passing day, the investigation gathered momentum, piecing together the intricate tapestry of deceit that surrounded President Natsu's assassination. The mounting evidence left little doubt about Kodo's complicity in the conspiracy, prompting the police to seek an arrest warrant for the former president's son. The thought of arresting Kodo was fraught with emotional and political implications, but the evidence left them no choice. The prosecution swiftly granted the request, marking a critical juncture in the pursuit of justice. Yet, even as the wheels of justice began to turn, the true motives behind Kodo's involvement remained elusive, a tantalizing enigma that continued to elude investigators. Amidst the fervent pursuit of truth, a sense of unease lingered, casting a shadow of doubt over the investigation. The threads of conspiracy tightened with each new revelation, drawing closer to uncovering the sinister forces lurking in the shadows. But there was a growing fear that they were missing something, that the real masterminds were still out there, manipulating events from the safety of the darkness. The tender moment of affection. As Kodo and Durika found solace in each other's embrace, their tender moment of affection was abruptly shattered by the ominous sound of approaching sirens. The distant wails gradually grew louder, pulling them out of their shared cocoon of intimacy and thrusting them into the harsh reality of the outside world. Uncertainty clouded their minds as they exchanged worried glances, their hearts racing with apprehension at the impending disturbance. With a heavy sigh, Kodo reluctantly released Durika from his embrace, his mind already racing with a myriad of possibilities regarding the source of the commotion. Were they in danger? Had something gone terribly wrong? The question swirled in his mind, demanding answers that remained elusive in the midst of the mounting tension. He had been so careful, so meticulous in his efforts to uncover the truth behind his father's assassination. But now, it seemed that the forces he had been fighting against had finally caught up with him. The crescendo of sirens reached its zenith as the flashing lights illuminated Durika's residence, casting an eerie glow over the surroundings. The sudden intrusion heightened their anxiety, urging them to steel themselves for whatever lay ahead. With cautious steps, they made their way toward the front door, bracing themselves for the unwelcome visitor about to arrive. As Durika opened the door, the sight of a solemn detachment of police officers standing before them sent a chill down Kodo's spine. Their official demeanor and the document they brandished spoke volumes, signaling the gravity of the situation about to unfold. His heart sank as the weight of their presence settled heavily upon him, a foreboding omen of the storm brewing on the horizon. The lead officer spoke with measured words, his voice carrying the weight of authority as he delivered the shocking accusation. Kodo, you are under arrest for conspiring to assassinate President Natsu. This is an arrest warrant, he announced, his words like a dagger piercing through the fragile veil of Kodo's innocence. For a fleeting moment, Kodo's mind reeled in disbelief, his senses overwhelmed by the gravity of the accusation leveled against him. Denial rose like a bitter bile in his throat as he vehemently protested his innocence, the words tumbling from his lips in a desperate bid to refute the damning allegations. How could this be happening? How could everything have gone so horribly wrong? But the police remained unmoved, their duty binding them to uphold the law without prejudice or favor. With a heavy heart, Kodo submitted to the inevitable, knowing that resistance would only serve to worsen his predicament. As the handcuffs closed around his wrists, sealing his fate, a sense of resignation settled over him, tempered by a steely resolve to confront the ordeal that lay ahead. He had been fighting for the truth, but now it seemed that the truth had turned against him. Walking alongside the officers, Kodo cast a final glance back at Durika, her tear-streaked face etched with a mixture of anguish and determination. Their eyes met in a silent exchange of solidarity, a silent vow passing between them amidst the tumultuous sea of uncertainty. Kodo knew that he would need every ounce of strength, every bit of courage, to face what was coming. But he also knew that he could not do it alone. I believe in you, Durika whispered, her voice barely audible above the din of the sirens and the chaos that engulfed them. And in that moment, as Kodo was led away into the unknown, he clung to those words like a lifeline, drawing strength from the unwavering faith of the woman he loved. For in the face of adversity, it was her belief in him that would serve as his guiding light, illuminating the path through the shadows of legal scrutiny and the looming specter of accusation. Kodo knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, but he also knew that he could not falter, not when the fate of a nation hung in the balance, and the legacy of his fallen father cried out for justice. As the investigation pressed forward, fueled by a relentless determination to unravel the truth, one thing became clear: the road to justice was fraught with peril, and the full extent of Kodo's motivations remained shrouded in mystery, a tantalizing enigma that taunted investigators at every turn. The arrest of Kodo was not the end of the journey, but the beginning of a new chapter, one that would test the limits of truth, loyalty, and justice in ways that none of them could have anticipated. The path ahead was uncertain, and the forces arrayed against Kodo were formidable. But with Durika by his side, and the memory of his father guiding him, Kodo knew that he would fight with everything he had to uncover the truth, clear his name, and bring the real conspirators to justice. For the legacy of President Natsu, for the future of Guerrillist, and for the love that had sustained him through the darkest of times, Kodo would not rest until the web of deceit had been torn apart and the light of truth had finally prevailed. A nation divided. The somber aftermath of President Natsu's funeral cast a pall over the nation, plunging Guerrillist into a state of mourning and uncertainty. The once vibrant streets were now muted with grief, and the entire country seemed to be holding its breath, waiting for a sign of what was to come. The loss of their leader had left a void that could not easily be filled, and the nation found itself standing at a crossroads, faced with the pressing need to appoint a new president to steer them through the tumultuous times ahead. Within the hallowed halls of the parliament, the air was thick with tension. The Grand Chamber, usually a place of lively debate and legislative discourse, had become the epicenter of a fierce and emotional battle. Voices clamored for a swift resolution to the leadership vacuum, and the lower house, tasked with the monumental decision of selecting the next president, grappled with the weight of their responsibility and the urgency of the situation. At the heart of the debate stood two prominent figures, each advocating for a different path forward. Congressman Bari, a seasoned politician and a staunch advocate for constitutional fidelity, argued passionately for the appointment of Vice President Baira to assume the presidency. Drawing upon the principles of legal protocol and established norms, Bari emphasized the importance of adhering to the constitutional framework, especially in times of crisis. For him, the rule of law was paramount, and any deviation from it could set a dangerous precedent. On the opposing end of the spectrum, Congressman Hedy, a fiery and charismatic leader, emerged as a fervent proponent of a more unconventional approach. Recognizing the unprecedented threat posed by the hyena forces and the exigencies of wartime, Hedy argued vehemently that the nation required a leader with a military background at its helm. In his view, the complexities of the current crisis demanded a leader who could navigate the treacherous waters of war with unwavering resolve and strategic acumen. For Hedy, this was not just about following the Constitution, it was about survival. As the debate unfolded, tensions within the parliament reached a fever pitch. The usually composed and orderly chamber became a battleground of ideas, with emotions running high on both sides of the aisle. The discourse became increasingly impassioned as each faction sought to advance its own agenda and sway the hearts and minds of their fellow lawmakers. Congressman Bari, steadfast in his commitment to upholding constitutional norms, took the floor with a calm yet authoritative presence. His voice, though measured, carried the weight of decades of experience and a deep understanding of the nation's legal and political fabric. Colleagues, Bari began, his voice echoing through the chamber, we stand at a critical juncture in our nation's history. The loss of President Natsu has left us all reeling, but in these moments of great sorrow and uncertainty, we must not lose sight of what has always guided us, the rule of law. The Constitution, which we have all sworn to uphold, clearly states that in the event of the president's death, the vice president shall assume the role of acting president for the remainder of the term. Bari paused, allowing his words to sink in. This is not a time for hasty decisions or reckless actions. It is a time for steadfast adherence to the principles that have served as the bedrock of our democracy. Vice President Baira is the rightful successor to President Natsu, and it is our duty to ensure a smooth and lawful transition of power. Across the chamber, Congressman Hedy listened with a look of barely concealed frustration. When Bari finished speaking, Hedy rose to his feet, his movements quick and purposeful. He strode to the center of the chamber, his presence commanding attention. Hedy was known for his passionate oratory, and today was no exception. Honorable colleagues, Hedy began, his voice brimming with urgency, I respect Congressman Bari's commitment to the Constitution, but we cannot afford to be so rigid in our thinking. The situation we face is unprecedented. We are on the brink of war with a ruthless enemy that will stop at nothing to see our nation destroyed. The hyena forces are not just a threat, they are an existential danger to everything we hold dear. Hedy's voice grew stronger as he continued, his eyes blazing with conviction. In times of peace, I would agree that following the constitutional protocol is the right course of action. But these are not normal times. We are in the midst of a crisis unlike any we have ever faced. Our enemy is cunning, brutal, and relentless. In such times, we need a leader who understands the art of war, who can think strategically and act decisively. Vice President Bari, though a capable politician, does not have the military expertise required to lead us through this storm. The chamber buzzed with murmurs of agreement and dissent. The divide between the two factions was palpable, and as the debate continued, it became clear that the parliament was deeply polarized. Bari, sensing the tide turning against him, refused to back down. He rose once more, his voice tinged with a quiet determination. Congressman Hedy speaks of the need for a strong military leader, but I ask you this, at what cost? If we abandon our constitution in this moment of crisis, what message does that send to the people of Gorillist? What precedent are we setting for future generations? The rule of law is not a luxury to be discarded in difficult times. It is the very foundation upon which our society is built. He continued, his tone becoming more impassioned. If we allow the head of the military to assume the presidency simply because we are at war, we risk undermining the very democracy that President Natsu fought so hard to protect. We must not let fear drive us to abandon the principles that have guided our nation for so long. Vice President Bari is the lawful successor, and it is our duty to uphold that law. Hedy, undeterred by Bari's arguments, countered with equal fervor. And I ask you, Congressman Bari, what good is the law if we do not survive to uphold it? The Constitution also provides for the head of the military to take charge during times of war. This is not a violation of our laws, it is an interpretation that fits the reality we face today. We are not abandoning our principles, we are adapting them to ensure our survival. The people of Gorillist deserve a leader who can protect them, who can lead our forces to victory. Admiral Ruda is that leader. He has the experience, the knowledge, and the resolve to see us through this crisis. The chamber erupted in heated exchanges as other lawmakers joined the fray, each side fiercely defending its position. The debate grew more intense, with accusations and counter-accusations flying across the aisle. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife, and it seemed as though the parliament might never reach a consensus. As the hours wore on, the Speaker of the House called for order, his voice struggling to rise above the din order. Order in the chamber, he called, his gavel pounding against the desk. Slowly, the noise subsided, but the tension remained, a palpable undercurrent that threatened to boil over at any moment. Seeing the opportunity to steer the debate back to a more constructive path, Bari took a deep breath and addressed the chamber once more. My esteemed colleagues, he said, his tone conciliatory, I understand the fears that many of you have. I share them. But we must not let fear cloud our judgment. The Constitution was written to guide us through times both good and bad. It is a document that has served us well for many years, and it is our duty to honor it. But if we believe that the current situation demands a different approach, then let us come together to discuss it in a manner that respects our laws and our democratic traditions. Hedy, sensing an opening, nodded in agreement. I concur with Congressman Bari on one point. We must have a thorough and honest discussion about what is best for our nation. But let us not be blinded by tradition when the survival of our people is at stake. We are lawmakers, yes, but we are also leaders. We must have the courage to make the difficult decisions that will protect our country, even if those decisions challenge the status quo. The debate continued, with each side presenting its case with renewed vigor. Bari and Hedy, though at odds, found themselves engaged in a battle of wits and principles that captivated the entire chamber. Their arguments were not just about the immediate decision of who should lead, but about the very soul of the nation and the values it stood for. As the debate raged on, the parliament found itself deadlocked, unable to reconcile the divergent viewpoints that defined the contentious issue at hand. The division within the chamber mirrored the division within the nation, a country torn between upholding the rule of law and adapting to the harsh realities of a world at war. With tensions mounting and the stakes growing ever higher, the parliament ultimately turned to a vote to determine the course of action. The speaker called for the ballots to be cast, and one by one, the lawmakers made their decision, their faces betraying the weight of the choice they were making. When the ballots were tallied, the outcome sent shockwaves reverberating through the hallowed chambers of the parliament. In a seismic shift that defied expectations, the majority of lawmakers aligned with Congressman Hedy's proposition, opting to prioritize military prowess and strategic leadership in the face of unprecedented challenges. The decision to elect Admiral Ruta as the new president marked a watershed moment in guerrillist history, signaling a departure from traditional norms and democratic principles. With the mantle of leadership now squarely placed in the hands of a military figure, the nation stood on the precipice of a new era, poised to navigate the turbulent waters of war under the guidance of a seasoned admiral. For guerrillists, the appointment of Admiral Ruta represented a pivotal juncture in its history, one that would shape the destiny of the nation and its people for years to come. As the nation braced itself for the challenges ahead, the eyes of the world turned towards guerrillists, watching with bated breath as it embarked on a journey fraught with uncertainty and peril. In the aftermath of the vote, the chamber was eerily quiet, the gravity of the decision hanging over the lawmakers like a dark cloud. Congressman Bari sat in his seat, his face a mask of resignation. He had fought valiantly for what he believed was right, but the tide had turned against him. He knew that the decision to place a military leader at the helm could have far-reaching consequences, not just for the current crisis, but for the future of guerrillists' democracy. As Bari gathered his papers and prepared to leave the chamber, Hedy approached him. The two men, who had been fierce opponents just moments before, now stood face to face, the tension between them softened by a mutual respect. "Bari," Hedy said, his voice devoid of the fire that had characterized his earlier speeches, "I know this wasn't the outcome you wanted. But I want you to know that I respect your dedication to the rule of law. It's what makes our nation strong." Bari looked at Hedy, his expression thoughtful. "And I respect your passion for protecting our people, Hedy," he replied. "I only hope that Admiral Ruta understands the weight of the responsibility he's been given. We are placing our future in his hands." Hedy nodded. "He does. And we'll need people like you to ensure that he stays true to the principles we all hold dear." With that, the two men parted ways, each carrying the weight of their decisions as they left the chamber. The battle between them had ended, but the struggle for the soul of guerrillists was far from over. As the days passed and Admiral Ruta prepared to assume the presidency, the nation of guerrillists held its collective breath. The decision to place a military leader in power was a gamble, one that could either lead the country to safety or push it further into turmoil. The eyes of the world were on guerrillists, and the choices made in the coming days would determine the nation's fate for generations to come. For Congressman Bari, the fight to uphold the rule of law was not over. He knew that he would continue to be a voice for constitutional fidelity, even as the nation navigated the treacherous waters of war. And for Congressman Hedy, the battle was just beginning. He had won the vote, but now he had to ensure that the leader he had championed would rise to the occasion and lead guerrillists to victory. The future of guerrillists hung in the balance, and as the nation prepared for the challenges ahead, its leaders knew that the decisions they made would shape the course of history. The debate in the parliament had ended, but the real test was only just beginning.